Hello gamers and welcome back. I'm Rob, of course, or Warshack if you want to call me by my in-game name, and I am really excited to be bringing you guys this video talking about the upcoming balance changes to Hearthstone with update 6.1.3. They've nerfed and changed a lot of the cards players have been complaining about for a very long time now, so I'm really happy to be covering these and really excited to be playing in a meta that isn't filled with shamans and Tuskar Totemic anymore, and basically Yog Sauron as well, which we'll get into later in the video. So this video basically is going to cover the introduction, why are they doing these changes and nerfs, and then we'll talk about each card or each class and then the cards being changed within that class, whether it's a good or bad thing, will the card continue to be played, and then maybe the decks that are found with that card and how those decks might be affected. So before we get started into the cards, this basic introduction states that, hey guys, it's us Blizzard. We've been monitoring all of the meta decks, how everybody's been doing, what are the top decks, what are the worst decks, what are the problems being introduced in that. You know, we've paid attention to tournaments. We don't really like how the competitive scene is currently, you know, how things are being panned out with cards such as Yog, which we'll again talk about later. So it's basically, you know, we've been just keeping an eye on things, and through doing that over the course of the past couple months, we've seen a few cards and particular classes that need to get, you know, a notch chipped off their shoulder to create more of an equilibrium in between all of the classes, so not just one or two or possibly three, which is what we have now. Classes are just far superior to the rest of the classes, to the point where you don't even really see a couple classes in tournaments at all, or in the competitive scene, or even on ladder anymore. Like playing against a priest is like seeing a deer on the highway. It just doesn't happen. You just if it's there, it's gonna die really soon because there's fast moving cars like shamans and they just trample the poor little deer. So besides that reference, let's hit into it. Shaman's our first class, and the first card that we're going to talk about is Rockbiter weapon. So originally this card is pay 1 mana, give a friendly character +3 attack this turn. So that can be used either on a creature or on your hero directly, allowing you to attack a minion and either kill the minion off that you would have not been able to kill prior because you don't have a minion, you yourself do not have a minion on the board, let you make a value trade, or, you know, or clear a minion that is too big for you to normally clear, or in most situations that your opponent puts it on their Doomhammer, and because Doomhammer can attack twice and this gives +3 attack, they've literally spent 1 mana to deal 6 damage, which is an insane amount of value and a huge amount of damage. And if you double Rockbiter, that's not even a game worth playing at that point. You just lose. So making Rockbiter to the switch where it costs 2 mana actually gives the shaman, you know, they have to sacrifice a little for them to be able to whip out the 10 damage Doomhammer. For them to make those value trades, they've got to pay an additional mana now. So with that, yes, we will be seeing less of Rockbiter, that's for sure. A lot of players are gonna be like, oh, this card is horrible now, you know, I have to pay 2 mana. Some 2 mana creatures such as totem golems, you know, they don't die to just the Rockbiter, but most creatures a Rockbiter will kill it. I still think it's a good card and it will be seen, but will it be seen less? Yes, it will. So moving on to the Tuskar Totemic, another shaman card being affected. So they didn't change the stats or its mana cost whatsoever. They changed it to battle cry, and it says originally summon any random totem, which meant totem golem, flame tongue totem, mana tide totem, to now summon a random basic totem, which definitely nerfs this guy quite a bit. I think he'll still be found in totem shaman, as getting totems out are very important in totem shaman, but I doubt this guy will actually be seen in maybe face shaman anymore, maybe even some mid-range. It's because it just no longer brings out the totem golem, the flame tongue, and the mana tide, which was the whole point to play this guy. Getting a normal totem was very sad and depressing when you're trying to go face, because those aren't the best face ones. But the totem golem on turn 3, that's basically a 6/6 in stats for 3 mana, which is absolutely absurd. So definitely a card that a lot of players have been complaining about. It's not nerfing it to the point where it's unplayable. It's nerfing it to the point where it's just not the best card ever, and it's an auto-include again in every kind of shaman you're going to build. Like this card was found in face shaman, mid-range shaman, even sometimes Control Shaman, just because of the value that this guy can bring out. He rolls you a Mana Tide or a Totem Golem on turn 3. It's insane. It makes it very hard for your opponent to come back after that, just because you randomly won a generation of a number from this guy. So definitely a solid change. Still going to be played in Totem Shaman, I believe so, but makes him a little bit more balanced. So not a terrible nerf. This next one is a little bit interesting in my opinion. We haven't hit the most interesting one yet, but the reason let's first talk about the card. Call of the Wild originally cost 8 mana, summon all 3 animal companions. So you got Misha, Leok, and Huffer. So you summon basically 3 minions for 8 mana, and then they've now brought it to 9 mana, and they've brought it to it has the same ability. So with this, normally, I think the main point is if a hunter has coin, right? You go second, you have coin. You can play Savannah Highmane on 6, coin into a 7-drop, and that 7-drop could have been Call of the Wild, and then you play your another Call of the Wild if you happen to have it. And there's not a whole lot of decks that can handle that kind of burst damage along with that amount of field kind of tempo, like putting 3 creatures for the cheap price of 8 mana, and all of those creatures are very annoying, especially with 1 charge, 1 buffs everything else, and 1 has taunt. So it's just an unbelievable card for the cheap price of 8 mana. With 9 mana, you can no longer do the coin after the Savannah Highmane into Call of the Wild. And on top of that, you can't combo it with your hero power if it's turn 10. It's really hard to play another creature with it because Call of the Wild into a 2-drop works. But with it being 9 mana, it makes it so the hunters actually have to pay the price of summoning 3 minions and all of them being really good, which is fair, right? This card will still be played in Hunter after this change. It'll just make them so it's a little bit later in the game before they swing out these huge turns with Call of the Wild, which a lot of the decks can't deal with, and they can deal with it. I take that back. It just requires them to have, it requires later in the game for those decks to handle it. You need more mana to deal with all those creatures. And when being able to play this thing on turn 7 right after you've already played a huge threat like Savannah Highmane, it's just too much for most decks to handle, and there's just not an answer to it. So with them, reducing it or increasing the cost by 1, I think was a good choice. 10 mana, that would have been too much, and it would have been really hard to kind of fit in there because hunters normally, they're not really a late game deck. So I think 9 mana is a good point because if you hold on to coin, you're still going to be able to play it on 8. You just don't have those basically auto win games when you can play Savannah Highmane into coin Call of the Wild. Like, that's a very hard game to lose if you're the hunter. The next one makes me very, very sad. As most of you guys know, I'm a very big fan and a favorite of the warrior decks. Execute is being nerfed, not by a whole lot in my opinion. I think it's fair, to be honest. I don't like to see it, right? Like, I don't want warrior to be nerfed at all because it's my favorite class, but this is it's a nerf that I saw coming for a little bit now, with cards like Execute costing 1 mana, or used to cost 1 mana, and then Shield Slam also costing 1 mana. It was kind of 2 really, really good removals for not a lot of mana, and you could basically kill whatever you wanted. So then bringing this to 2 kind of puts it on par with just like, hey, you already have one other cheap removal spell. You already have a bunch of cards like Bash, Slam, Brawl. We kind of have to, you're going to have to pay for your CCs now instead of just giving them to you for free, which is fair. So this Execute, it does nerf it. Will Execute still be seen in Warrior? Of course, every Warrior is still going to play 2 of them. It just adds a little bit more to the cost of having to remove whatever you want, right? Which, another mana, it hurts it, but not too much, and it's of course still going to be seen. This next one, Charge. This kind of goes by what Blizzard's been pushing for a long time now. If they don't like the decks that are able to win, you're able to win in 1 turn versus your opponent without any reaction from your opponent whatsoever. They have no play that they can beat you. It's you basically take them from 30 health to 0 health in 1 turn, and that's it. They nerfed Leroy Jenkins with the Shadow Steps with Shadow Step when the Miracle Rogue was a really big issue because players would just lose in 1 turn. And then this Charge card, which I haven't talked about yet, but I'm going to now, sorry about that, the OTK Warrior. So they use Raging Worgen, and they inner rage, Rampage, they Taskmaster if they need to too, and they go ahead and they give it Charge charge, and then they throw a Faceless Manipulator, which copies the minion's stats and all of its buffs and abilities, and because it was damaged, it can attack twice. So now you have 2 Raging Worgens on the field that have like 12 attack that can attack twice, which is way more than 30 damage in total, meaning that you can kill your opponent from 30 health to 0 in one turn with it. It's not that crazy to have, 4 or 5 cards in your hand over the course of the entire game when your whole deck is built around drawing cards. And stalling your opponent. So a change like charge is not, it was bound to happen eventually because Blizzard does not, like I mentioned, like those particular kinds of decks, and it's definitely not fun to play against. It's a fun deck to play because it requires a lot of thinking. Dealing that quantity of damage over the course of just one turn is really fun, but it's just not, in my opinion, I don't know. I can't say it's not a healthy deck for the game because the deck does require skill to pilot, and the deck still can lose, but there's no interaction once those cards are pieced together and you obtain them. There's nothing your opponent can do at that point. So that's why they kind of changed charge to what it is now. It can no longer attack. No, we actually didn't even talk about the mana cost of the card, but with its old form, give a friendly minion +2 attack and charge, which means it can attack right away. And then now it says give a friendly minion charge. It can't attack heroes this turn, which means it can't attack their face, but it can attack other creatures. So the card is definitely still playable. It's just not the OTK Worgen, or I should say the one-turn kill Worgen warrior deck is no longer going to be a thing, which is sad. I'm glad I did not make that deck on my free-to-play account now. The next card is Abusive Sergeant. So this kind of, it's not shocking because Leper Gnome, or I should say, Leper Gnome got the same treatment. It turned into a 2-drop 1/1. This guy turns into a 1-drop 1/1, but you don't play this guy for his stats. He had great stats as is for a 1-drop, but the reason you play him is because of his battle cry. And his battle cry says, give a minion +2 attack this turn, which allows minions that either don't have any attack or have very little attack and don't cost a lot of mana like Abusive Sergeant to be able to kill larger minions that your opponent paid much more. They paid more mana to bring it out, and you're literally not spending anything besides 1 mana to buff a small creature that you don't care about to kill that big, minion that's causing you some trouble. So overall, this card is definitely, in my opinion, still going to be played. It's just not as good. Again, you didn't play this guy. Well, you played this guy because he was a 1-drop 2/1. You're like 2/1. Hell yeah, he only costs 1 mana, and he gives this awesome battle cry. But overall, he still has the awesome battle cry, and that's the reason he's played. So I think we'll still see some Abusive Sergeant. Yes. Will we see less of it? Probably. But I can see where they're going with this particular nerf, and they didn't nerf it to the ground, give a minion +1 attack. That would have made this card absolutely trash. If it would have kept it like a 1-drop 2/1, give a minion +1 attack, that would have been a little bit interesting too, because the +1 attack, it's just not, 2 makes a very significant difference because a lot of minions have 4 HP, and a lot of low drops are like 2/1s or 2/3s or things of that nature. So, giving a +1 attack would have been interesting, but this is a fair choice no matter what. And then our last card, everybody's favorite, Yog Sauron. So there's been I'll kind of go into a little bit of detail and then the changes made. So this card, originally, everybody loved it. It was a very gimmicky card that people just put in their decks and they played it just for the fun of Yogg. And, it does all of this random stuff because it says cast a random spell for each spell you've cast this game. So basically, you have, anywhere between 10 to 15 spells in your deck. By turn 10, you've casted a large majority of them. You play Yog Sauron. He casts at least, 8+ spells. All of them are random, targeting random creatures. Just overall a fun card. But the problem came with the statistics that went behind the card that, most of the time, like, what was it? Like 2 out of 3 times, putting it like the most simplest forms, 2 out of 3 times he gave you kind of a spot that leaves your opponent unable to really react to. Like, he's going to clear the board, he's going to summon minions, he's going to play you a ton of secrets, you're going to draw a bunch of cards. He was basically the, oh shit, big red button, I'm going to lose this game. Like, I am going to lose this game. There's only Yog Sauron can save me, and if he saves me, most likely he's going to turn this game around and make it either tied, or I'm going to win the game just because I played Yog Sauron and his randomness won me the game, which is very sad in the tournament scene. For just normal playing Hearthstone, he's great, he's fun, you know, a lot of players like him. But when you look at this guy in a competitive scene and players are, you know, they're competing for $25,000, $50,000, $100,000, just large sums of money, and the game comes down to whoever got the best Yog Sauron, that just it just leaves people with a bad feeling, and just not it kind of knocks the competitiveness down in Hearthstone, because it wasn't who outplayed each other that game, it was whose Yog Sauron did the best random shit. So this change that they did to it says when Yog Sauron dies, whenever the random spells are cast, so let's say he casts, you know, a Doom or a Siphon Soul on Yog, and Yog kills himself, all of the spells that he was going to cast thereafter are negated. So he no longer continues to cast once Yog Sauron dies, when he's casting all his randomness. And most of the time, Yog kills himself, because a lot of the cards, you know, target this, kill it, or, you know, wipe the board, do a whole bunch of different things. And Yog kills himself, I want to say like 50% of the time. So this kind of nerfs Yog to the point where he'll still be found in those fun, gimmicky decks, but he'll probably be seen less in those really competitive scenes where he was really dominating, because there was just so many pros to having him in your deck versus just not. So Tuskar Totemic and Yog are definitely my two favorite changes out of all of these changes thus far. This Yog being a main one. If you guys have seen any of my videos thus far, the months that Yog Sauron's been around, we've seen some really bullshit moments. And if you watch the tournaments, I'm sure you've seen the kind of shenanigans that this guy whips out, that just players who obviously deserve the win, they've outplayed the opponent, they've outvalued them, and the opponent just drops Yog and they win. It's just like, well, you know, you really didn't deserve that win. It's just the game gave it to you because this card just cast a bunch of random shit. So, looking at this more from a competitive standpoint versus just playing them on ladder for fun. So that basically wraps up all of the changes made, my thoughts behind the changes, and yada yada yada. So as always, hopefully you've enjoyed. If there's anything I happened to miss or didn't go over, or you're confused on, or you'd like to share to all of the other viewers in the channel, go ahead and leave it in the comments section below. I'll try to respond back to you guys as soon as possible, because I know there'll be a lot of chatter about this particular video, because these changes affect everybody and everybody's got a different opinion. Keep in mind, these are just my opinions about the cards that are being balanced or changed or nerfed, however you want to put it. So yeah, I'll see you in the next one, of course, guys. I'm Rob, or Warshack, and happy whatever the hell day it is.